For centuries, Venezuela was ruled by the rich and for the rich, leaving a massive and visible gap between the wealthy and the poor.
This tension exploded when in the late 1980s, aggressive neoliberal policies under President Carlos Andrés Pérez and a drop in the oil price led to nationwide uprisings. Thousands were believed to be killed, but this event sparked a movement that would soon reach almost every corner of Latin America.
On February 27, 1989, Venezuelans rose up in spontaneous protests against catastrophic free market policies. The uprising known as the Caracazo was brought on by soaring poverty and the collapse of living standards. Driven by hunger and need, people targeted supermarkets and stores to obtain the food they cannot afford. But the government had no remorse for its starving population and responded with utmost brutality. The constitution was suspended and approximately 3,000 people were killed by the police. The bloody event was described as the first rebellion against neoliberalism in the country. It was a moment in history which opened the doors towards progressive change in Venezuela.
While the Caracazo uprising was one of the most significant events in Venezuela's recent history, the basis for deepening the democratic change achieved in 1999 with the election of Hugo Chavez was the mobilization and the political organization of the people.
Hugo Chavez mobilized people in part by promoting new forms of participatory democracy, in which grassroots movements and the locally based organizations play a central role, not just in the elections, but also in the planning and development of Venezuela.
El ciudadano venezolano, bajo esa identidad del chavismo que lo moviliza, es un pueblo activo, o sea, activo permanentemente. En las zonas populares tú puedes ver cómo permanentemente hay toda una organización que se plantea, se reestructura, crece, se organiza políticamente, se organiza socialmente, y todo eso es gracias a la conciencia que despertó el chavismo dentro del pueblo.
The central idea behind this was to shift political and economic power from a system which was designed for the wealthy and deliver to the country's majorities. This has also implied reducing dependency on privileged sectors, who with the help of the US and its allies have waged a relentless war to retain their power, leading to economic sabotage and shortages, as well as violence that has targeted social activists, political leaders and institutions identified with the government.
Another important pillar of the revolution, which has ensured its longevity, is the Venezuelan military, whose support has provided the necessary stability against threats while also taking on important roles within various communities.
The military in Venezuela have played a vital role in the revolution and became the backbone for democratic stability and against foreign intervention under Hugo Chavez, who spent 17 years of his life in the military and built a movement within its ranks. However, for many decades, it was the military which was charged with suppressing leftist movements in the country, beginning with President Rómulo Betancourt's crackdown in the late 1950s and 60s. Any serious attempt to challenge the government was always halted by the military. In 1969, during the presidency of Rafael Caldera, Venezuela's Communist Party was legalized again. Caldera created a peace committee with civilians and former fighters as members. As a result, the People's Liberation Army was officially disbanded. Smaller guerrilla groups would remain and continue their struggle until the late 70s, right around the time a new wave of revolutionaries were organizing, this time coming from the government's own forces. Heavily influenced by Venezuela's Communist Party, the Revolutionary Left Movement and other left parties, the Revolutionary Bolivarian Movement 200 was founded in 1982 by then-Lieutenant Hugo Chavez Frias. The name would also commemorate 200 years since South American liberator Simón Bolívar was born. During this decade, Venezuela would descend into a deep economic crisis, driven by falling oil prices and the aggressive neoliberal policies that followed, hitting the working class in the country hard. Unemployment, food shortages, and poverty were on the rise. Following the brutality of the Caracazo, Chávez began organizing what would become Operation Zamora, an attempt to overthrow the government through a civilian and military uprising in 1992. But with only partial support from the military, the operation failed and the coup plotters, including Chávez, were arrested.
Compañeros, lamentablemente por ahora los objetivos que nos planteamos no fueron logrados en la ciudad capital. Es decir, nosotros acá en Caracas no logramos controlar el poder. Ya es tiempo de reflexionar y vendrán nuevas situaciones y el país tiene que enrumbarse definitivamente hacia un destino mejor.
In November of the same year, allies of Chávez once again carried out an attempt to overthrow the government, but were once again unsuccessful. This time, the events left some 150 casualties, and the Pérez government was hit with allegations of abduction and extrajudicial executions. Less than a year later, in May of 1993, the economic crisis, coup attempts, and general disapproval of the government culminated in the impeachment of Carlos Andrés Pérez under charges of corruption. A new government was elected with Rafael Caldera as president. During his campaign, he promised a pardon would be granted to the participants of the coup attempts. And so, in 1994, Chávez, who had now become famous across the country and especially popular among the poor, was able to walk out of prison as a free man.
Upon his election as president in 1999, Hugo Chávez initiated a referendum to let the Venezuelan people draft a new constitution. The process and document it birthed became essential for the democratization of the country and the radicalization of the revolution.
On February 2nd, 1999, Hugo Chávez, a former lieutenant colonel with Venezuela's armed forces, takes office as president of the Republic of Venezuela.
Juro delante de Dios, juro delante de la patria, juro delante de mi pueblo, que sobre esta moribunda constitución haré cumplir, impulsaré las transformaciones democráticas necesarias para que la República Nueva tenga una carta magna adecuada a los nuevos tiempos. Lo juro.
The Bolivarian Revolution and Hugo Chávez returned to the Venezuelan peoples a fundamental right that had been lost. The right to participate and play a role in making decisions about main issues in their country and communities. On April 25, 1999, a referendum took place, and with an 88% approval by the people, a National Constituent Assembly would be called to write a new constitution within a 6-month period. A few months later, another election was called to vote for the members of this Constituent Assembly. And despite the fact that the majority of candidates came from the opposition, candidates supporting Chávez movement took 95% of the seats. Finally, on December 15 of the same year, another national referendum approved the new Venezuelan constitution with 71.8% of the votes. This new constitution established the foundation for a system based on equality, social justice, and popular democracy, encouraging participation of all the people, those who had been left behind in spite of the country's considerable oil wealth. It is generally regarded by many as one of the most advanced constitutions in terms of enshrining human and social rights, along with other progressive principles that have served as the basis of the Bolivarian Revolution.
So stay tuned for our next episode ahead of the presidential elections in Venezuela, when we take a look at the democratic development since Hugo Chávez took office and the challenges that emerged in the process. Thank you for watching.